Hey, this is Bonita Friedericy, and you're listening to Chuck versus the Podcast.
Hi, my name is Graham Jones, but you can call me Gray. This is my show. It's about Chuck. It's filled with interviews, the latest news, crazy co-hosts, and spoilers that'll make your day. Oh, wait, I need to go back. I host these TV nights. They used to be pretty boring, but everything changed when I found NBC's new show, Chuck. Pretty soon, my TV night got pretty crowded. Guys I didn't even know were showing up the door. Big, important guys. Really scary, nasty, get killed for hosting them guys. Next thing I know, these super episodes are downloaded into my brain, which means every moment of my life, I'm thinking about Chuck. ChuckTV.net sent their top people to protect me. That's Mel and Liz. They're pretty zany. They co-host with me now, as a cover. So now I must welcome you to Chuck versus the Podcast, the #1 TV podcast for NBC's Chuck. This is Gray.
This is Mel.
And this is Liz.
And I want to welcome you to Chuck versus the Podcast, episode 23 for Sunday, June 21st, 2009. I want to thank everybody for all your well wishes, especially at ChuckTV.net. I am back. I'm on the mend and should be at 100% real soon.
That's good to hear.
That is.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have a lot of commentary in this episode because the majority of it will be our interview with the very engaging Bonita Friedericy, who plays General Beckman on Chuck. But we do have some Chuck news to share, so let's get to that.
That's right. We want to talk about Chuck Meme Mondays, which are underway right now. And to keep things hopping during the long break until Season 3 launches in March, we're watching Chuck from the beginning every Monday. And we started with Chuck versus the pilot on June 1st. And are watching one episode per week while commenting on ChuckTV.net and twittering with each other. And we've had 3 successful viewing parties so far, and hope you will plan to join us this Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern for Chuck versus the Wookiee. You can find more details at ChuckTV.net. Come on and join the fun. We are having a lot of fun.
It's amazing. You know, Gray, I know when you were talking on the CNN Save Our Show campaign, you mentioned that this is such a community show. And I agreed with you at the time, but now watching it with this vast online community, it really, strikes home how accurate that is, because we are having so much fun watching it together.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was reading something at ChuckTV.net about how it was even ranking really highly in the Twitter numbers.
It is. There's this thing called trending on Twitter, so that when a lot of people are talking about the same thing, it'll start trending. And if you're on the twitter.com website, you'll see on the right-hand side there's a column that says trending, and it'll have it'll have the top 10 keywords. Mm-hmm. And so what we do is we use Chuck Me Mondays as our tag. Mm-hmm. So when you're commenting about the episode, you put the hashtag and then Chuck Me Mondays, and that counts it for that trending topics application. And so far we've trended every Monday.
Wow.
We've trended that. Yeah. So, and we've been up against some pretty steep competition. We had this most recent one was the Iran elections.
Wow.
Yeah. We trended to number 7 there, and some people were saying, oh, we only got to number 7. Well, there are some more important things in the world than Chuck, but to trend to number 7 up against that conversation was pretty good. I think our highest was number 4, and that was our first Monday, I think. But and that was up against Apple's iPhone release. So yeah, we're doing pretty well, and that's worldwide. So we're doing pretty good. We're getting in the top 10. Very,
very cool. I do have an idea. A number of us might be late in the game, like myself with my health issues. I wasn't able to get started along with everybody else, and I had an idea that 3 Chuck episodes take about the same amount of time as a movie that you might see in the theater. So why don't you actually host a Meet Chuck night? And as a matter of fact, even if you might have gotten started with the Chuck Me Mondays, and then you have a new group of friends that you want to introduce, have a Meet Chuck night and get a whole bunch of people out and watch the first 3 episodes in a row. I know when I've done that with people, they are immediately not only hooked, but they're just, gung-ho for the show. And that way, you could very quickly catch up to the Chuck Me Mondays group and join in with everybody along with the right episode.
We've actually had some comments from people also saying, well, I don't know that I can stop with this episode tonight. I'm going to have to watch, 1 or 2 more. But yeah, Meet Chuck night to catch up would be a great idea, and highly recommend it. Because of that, also because of that trending Twitter topics, we've grabbed a few more people who are saying, what's this Check Me Mondays? What's this all about? And then, of course, we tell them, and they start watching the episode with us, and now they're hooked.
Yeah, and absolutely make sure that when you do have your Chuck nights and are inviting people over, that you tell them about all the other ways that they can support the show. Tell them about the podcast. Tell them about chucktv.net. Tell them about the Twitter campaign and watching at NBC.com and all those other ways that they can support. Let's multiply our efforts.
That's right. That's the whole point.
That's right.
Yeah. And speaking about multiplying, the podcast has been doing great. Over the course of the fan campaign, our listeners went from about 15,000 to 70,000, which is a huge, huge jump. As Zach would say, that's freaking awesome. However, the flip side is that we've had to upgrade our server and also pay for a ton of extra bandwidth. I won't say the exact amount, but you need 4 digits to make the number. Mm-hmm. And one of our issues is that most people access the podcast by iTunes, so per-click advertising at chuckpodcast.com doesn't work very well. That's why you won't see it on the site. Our numbers are very low, for instance, compared to fan sites that have forums and things like that. And for us, chucktv.net really acts as that. If people have asked about this, you absolutely still can and do use iTunes to access a podcast, but make sure you also bookmark and visit the site. And on the main page, you're going to find something called donations. We've received a few donations so far. Thank you very much for those who have donated, but we need quite a lot more to help to support the podcast. We really, really need your help here because it's become a big amount, and it is a lot more than just a little hobby project now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're really excited that we not only have donations, but there's a couple of other cool things.
Yeah, we have a merchandise line for Chuck versus the podcast at cafepress.com/ChuckTV. If you go to that URL, you'll see a section that says Chuck versus the podcast. And if you click through to that, we have 2 different lines of merchandise that you can purchase to display your love of Chuck versus the podcast. And then the podcast will get a little bit of a kickback as well to help with our server fees.
And it is some really cool stuff. I want one of everything.
I know. We have to say thank you so much again to Chad, the Chuck fan who designed the logos that you'll see when you get there. He also provided a lot of the graphics for the Watch, Buy, Share, Write campaign to renew Chuck and a few other things. He's just a genius when it comes to this, and it's usually without us even asking. He'll just basically say, I see what you tried to do there, but how about this? And it's like 1,000 times better. So thanks to him for that.
Thanks, Chad. And we also have another way that you can support us, which I know that everybody wants to buy the Chuck DVD. Lots of people want to buy the Chuck comic book, etc. And since you're going to be buying them anyway, you might be buying them at Amazon.com. If you're going to buy them there, you might as well buy through us, and then we get a little bit of a kickback. So if you go to chuckpodcast.com, there's a link with a little mini Amazon store called, wait for it, Chuckazon, where you can buy Chuck-related items from Amazon, but we get a little kickback. So please, if you're going to buy anyway, might as well buy through us, and then you can help support the podcast.
That's right. And we appreciate your support, and we hope to keep bringing you the podcast for years to come and seasons to come.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And now on to our main event, which is my chat with Bonita Friedericy. She very graciously took about an hour out of her day and talked with us about her character in particular and Chuck in general. So we hope you enjoy it.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm surrounded by my 2 cats at this moment. One of whom she needs to go have an ultrasound today, so you're not supposed to feed them 8 hours before they have to go in.
So she's really loving you right now, isn't she?
Oh God! Everywhere I go, she has hopped up when I was trying to sleep. She hopped up on my head 7 times.
Aw.
I know, poor little thing. And now her brother doesn't understand what's going on either, so they're just both sitting here staring at me. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks.
Oh, good.
No cat problems over here, thank goodness.
Do you have kitties?
I lost my kitty last summer after, she was 16. So she was ready to go, and I was ready to let her go, but I haven't been able to get myself to get another cat yet. So
I'm sorry. That's what I'm worried about. My girl's 15, and
yeah,
we have to look into some things here.
Yeah, she probably my cat just was an idiot, so she did some stupid things like getting hit by a car and getting in fights with cats twice her size. So, she kind of brought it on herself.
What a little scrapper she is.
She was a little scrapper. She's this cute little white with a little pink nose, just dainty looking little thing. But yeah, she could give you a death glare like nothing else I've seen.
That's what my husband says about me.
Scrappy?
No, I can give him a death glare like no one's ever seen.
Yeah.
We call it the hairy eyeball.
Awesome. Oh, okay. Well, shall we get on with the questions? Did they send you the questions?
They did. I love you that you do that because it really allows me the time to think, which is great.
Yeah, we had such a great response from the little bit that we got of you in our rally podcast that we just knew we had to do something. So we wanted to make sure we got some good questions in there.
Excellent. I think they're fabulous.
Good. Okay. Well, I'm going to start it as though we just started talking.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there. All right. This is Mel with Chuck versus the Podcast, and I am here with Bonita Friedericy, also known as General Beckman. So welcome, and thank you again for taking the time to talk with us.
Oh, a great pleasure. I'm delighted to speak with you. And by the way, I like to call her General Diane Chuckles, in quotes, Beckman.
And why is that?
Because she's got such a tremendous sense of humor, cracking one joke after another, laughing at all of Chuck's jokes, She's just one big bag of laughs.
I tell you, that's exactly who we see on screen, too. Chuck.
I thought so.
Well, the fan response to our rally podcast was very positive in general, but we received the most comments about you.
Really?
Everybody wanted more Bonita.
Well,
so
I'll pass that on to my husband, too. Everybody wanted more Bonita, John.
Yeah.
No, that's delightful to hear. I'm very happy to hear that. And thank you so much for doing this podcast. I really, I think you found out talking to everyone who works on the show just how special an experience it is for everyone. So,
and that makes it a special experience for the fans, too, because we know you guys are having as much fun making it as we're having watching it.
I know. I think that's tremendous. I'm glad that carries across onto the screen, too.
Well, let's start at the beginning, shall we?
Shall we? Yes.
Yes, you've been working steadily. I was looking at your IMDb resume, and you've only been working in television and film for about 12 years, but my goodness, you've got more credits than people that have been in the business for 50 years.
Well, sometimes when you start later, you're making a very strong choice. And actually, my husband John did kind of the same thing, and to even a greater degree. He came down here, I think, in about 15 years ago, and sort of dove headfirst into the TV and film thing because both of us we met down here, but both of us have very big theater backgrounds. Mm. But for me, I had been working in theater, working in a number of theater companies. I've been directing, and I was substitute teaching in the LA Unified School District to offset the fact that theater doesn't pay.
Bless your heart.
At one point, I know, middle school. At one point, my sister said to me, honey, I wouldn't want you teaching my sons, my nephews, whom I love.
Oh, dear.
Shock. And she was right. I mean, I hadn't the proper background. I've been doing it off and on for years, and I was very well-intentioned. And I think in terms of, dealing with children well and being supportive, I was good. But in terms of actually passing along the appropriate information, not so much. And so, it was kind of that turning point of, I really should get serious about teaching and go back to school, or I should get serious about acting and make some money. Mm-hmm. And the thought of going back to school was more than I could bear. So I kind of dove headfirst into trying to figure out how to get work as a TV and film actress. And, I had an incentive, so.
Sure.
I think I got darn lucky,
Well, I was surprised when I was looking at your resume at all the different things you've done. The kind of led up to Beckman, General Beckman. It's been a pretty diverse career. What
you could say that.
Yeah. What first interested you in acting?
Well, I started when I was really little. Not in any way that anyone would know. It wasn't like I was, a famous child actor. But, when I was 10 years old, both my sister and my brother did acting in high school. Mm-hmm. They're both artists. My sister's now a doll maker. My brother, who has passed away, was a fabulous fine artist. But they both did drama in high school, and I was 4 and 6 years younger than my sister and my brother, and I got kind of, roped into doing all their little plays in our house and things like that. Interestingly enough, my brother, who was gay, always played the evil witches and things when we were little, which I loved. And then my brother was doing Fiddler on the Roof at his high school, and he was playing the Taylor model Camsoil, and they needed a little girl. So he brought me in, and I came in and met the director, and I had my little teeny purse that just had a little brush in it, as I remember. And he asked me what I had in my purse, and I pulled out the brush, and that was it. I got the part. And so, after that, I really liked it. And, I, oddly enough, was a very, very shy child. And I had buck overlap front teeth, and I still to this day, I get really nervous around people. It comes from my mother. And the idea of and I was kind of like a little perfect goody two-shoes and, kind of straight-A student. And the idea of being able to act out the other parts that we live in life mm-hmm. was really good for me. I think I recognized really early on that psychologically I needed something to help me. And I kind of stuck with acting. I did it all through high school and college.
And then that led to theater work?
It did. Because I was just being that shy, kind of frightened kid. I didn't know how to go about getting an agent. I was really scared of that. And rather than do that, I just did play after play after play. Sometimes I'd do 5 or 6 plays a year,
Wow.
Three at once. Yeah, it was pretty intense. I love it. I mean, I love theater. Mm-hmm.
It's
and
addictive,
you get to play
I've
such
heard.
A wide range of roles. So.
Yeah. So your turning point then was substitute teaching in L.A., and that prompted you to head toward TV and film seriously.
Well, I started substitute teaching when I was 23, which is not one of the brighter things I ever did. Right around that time, I was very lucky, and I was cast in a production of Tartuffe at what is now defunct, but it was called the Los Angeles Theater Center, which is in downtown L.A. on Spring Street, and that was like this really interesting experiment. It was 4 theaters in one building that was an old bank building, so you would have 4 plays going on at once, and you'd have audiences spilling out from a musical, spilling out from, an experimental piece, spilling out from, a period piece, all getting to talk to each other and experience it. And they had really, really amazing actors that would work there for peanuts because it was such an interesting place to work. And so I was lucky enough to get cast in this production of Tartuffe when I was 23, 24, and it was starring Jessica Walter and Ron Liebman, who are husband and wife, and at that time were very well-known actors, and I got my equity card. And but what I realized is that I was, absolutely scared to death of how you got, an agent and how you did all the things you were supposed to do to get a TV and film career. So I stayed safely hidden in theater, and I needed to get my insurance, health insurance and things like that because I promised my parents, and, I stumbled upon substitute teaching in Los Angeles. So at 23, I started doing that in between my theater career, and it was just so silly because back then I would substitute for high school classes in East LA, where the kids are 18 years old. And I'm 23, and they just walk up to me and go, I'm walking out in this, and don't stop me. You're like, okay,
yeah.
Hi, I like your help. I don't know how to do this. So I did that on and off for about 12 years.
Wow, that's impressive.
I got better at it.
Yeah, I'm sure, out of necessity.
Yes, actually, it's funny because if you think about it, I think about this a lot. Much of what I do as General Beckman is based on what I used to do to control classrooms. That side of me, I'm kind of a little, I'm not particularly strict in my own personal life, but that side of me that had to when you have a classroom with 40, 12-year-old boys and girls, hear, that aren't going to, listen to you and don't want to listen to you because, for one thing, you're not their real teacher if you stepped into the classroom. You have to be able to, with one look, let them know that you're not messing around. And if they move, they will be sent to the principal or whatever. And I kind of refined that to an art. At my height, I could walk into a classroom and everyone would just go to their seats and sit down.
Nice.
I know. They used to have me train other subs, and the subs would go like, "Why are they doing that?" And I'd say, I used to spread rumors. I used to have the kids that really liked me. I'd say, "Go tell everyone that you just don't cross Miss Friedericy," and
Excellent.
they would spread it around the school. So I got this huge reputation, but they loved me. But
yeah,
I knew how to draw a line, and I do use that as Beckman.
I can see that. Yeah, now that you say it, she is kind of the very strict school teacher.
Yes, /mom.
Yeah.
Particularly with Chuck.
Yes, she needs to be sometimes.
Well, yeah, because he's like a big kid.
Yeah.
Actually, they all are, and it's funny. It's like the little boys and the little girls when she has to talk to them when they're in the castle. It's like, then the little boys are playing with the little girl, and they need not to. You have to keep them in separate rooms.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And going off on their own, and you've got Casey who wants to mind Mom, and his two siblings are not.
Yes, and that's what's so perfect, like, about when the episode they wrote, the Chuck versus the Colonel. It's like when I taught PE, I taught a lot of different subjects too. When I taught PE, mm-hmm. when you have 300 kids in a class in their little, PE outfits, and, they're going to pull each other's pants down, they're going to throw rocks at each other, they're going to do all sorts of things because you're outdoors. Mm-hmm. And I'd always find the boy that was kind of like the kind of head bully jock guy, and I'd pull him aside, and I would stand there, and I'd say, you are fantastic. You are utterly the leader of this class, and I need you. I need you to help me. I need you to, be the leader, because they'll listen to you. And they get little tears in their eyes,
Aww.
I know, and then they go out there and they take care of everyone. And I pretty much with Chuck and the Colonel, I feel like it's pull Casey aside, tell him he's the best, he's wonderful. Mm-hmm. Now take care of everyone for me.
And we saw later in that episode that he really did have his feelings hurt that Sarah and Chuck went off and at him.
I know. Well,
that's
what
hard.
I love about Casey is he is like just a big boy,
Mm-hmm. That was really sweet. He still had to, go by the book as much as possible, but once they gave him a workaround, he was on board.
Well, that's what I think is one of the delicacies of this show that I love so much, is that there's a huge sense of loyalty. And what is the meaning of friendship and supporting each other, and exactly like you're saying, how you sort of can get around that. Because, that's, I think, something that is very important about General Beckman is you do have to have someone who is the parent, who does say, what comes first is safety. What comes first is the safety of the country. Mm-hmm. I can't back down. I can have moments where there is a kindness to a degree, not a great degree, but, a sense of respect. But there are lines that have to be drawn. And once you set that pyramid up, that idea that everybody within the hierarchy, both in the Buy More and in, the spy structure, have, moments where they're supporting the loyalty, moments where they find ways around, having to toe the line that is the I'm not saying this very well, the structure
mm-hmm.
Of rules. Where they
right.
Yeah. But in both instances, it's really fun because once you get the structure in place, and even if it's, Tony Hale, who, is, again, not the most positive influence, once you get the structure in place, then people can tiptoe around in it.
Right. Because otherwise you have anarchy, and then you have fulcrum.
Exactly.
Right.
Although fulcrum's very well organized.
They seem to be. I want to ask your thoughts on them a little bit later, but first just tell us a little bit about what led you to the role of Beckman. How did you end up being Diane Chuckles-Beckman?
Well, this is kind of an interesting, for a Beckman, it's kind of an interesting story. First of all, she was actually originally named General Mary Beckman, mm-hmm. which I think was changed to Diane because it made a better delivery line for John Larroquette. When he says, "Hello, Diane."
Gosh, that was good.
Oh, he's brilliant. But I think "Hello, Mary" is probably wasn't quite as effective. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I was not the first General Beckman. If you watched the pilot, that is not me.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. Shoot. John, what is the gal's name? He played her girl. Oh, Wendy McKenna was the original Beckman. So I auditioned for General Beckman, and it went very well, except for me what happened is I walked in, and there was a chair in the middle of the room where you have to audition in front of the camera, and all the executive producer guys were in there, and I said, oh, do you want me to do this sitting? And one of them said, well, you're a general, shouldn't you decide? And being me, I got a little flustered, and I went, oh, yeah, because I don't usually come in character. I went, okay. So I moved the chair, and then someone went, well, now you're blocking the fire escape. And it was a doorway, and I kind of felt a little half bubble off plum, although it went very, very well. Now, apparently it came down between Wendy McKenna and me, and Wendy is very well known for the fact that she is a fabulous actress, and she is very ballsy when she auditions for things. And I have a feeling she came in, hell bent for leather, and apparently I'm friends with the casting people. It went back and forth, and they settled on Wendy. And then the pilot came up, and I'm not quite sure what happened. I think in the long run it may have been because she's actually a very attractive woman, and that's not necessarily something they were looking for in Beckman. They decided to let her go. And eccentrically enough, my husband, John Billingsley, was a series regular on the TV show called The Nine. And I played his kind of ball-busting wife on that, whom he left. Somewhere later they only shot 13 episodes, and they never aired all of them. In the last 3 episodes, he found a girlfriend, and the girlfriend happened to be Wendy McKenna.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. So they're good friends, and so she had emailed him and said, yeah, I think Bonnie may end up doing this role after all. And so sure enough, they called me, and they said, we want you to be General Beckman. And
the rest is history.
I ended up with that role, which I have to say I feel very lucky and fortunate and very, very happy to be playing her.
We're having a lot of fun watching her. We were particularly excited when she actually came out from behind the desk and was on site.
I was too. Believe me, it was funny because the crew is just such a wonderful group of people, and because for a long time I would just, I hang out at my desk, and everyone comes and hangs out with me. I sort of hold parties over at my little desk area. When they all had read the script ahead of time, where I came out, everyone would come whisper over to me. They go, Beckman's got legs. And I go, what? And I walk over to someone else. They go, Beckman's got legs. What? And they go, you get to walk around. It's like, woohoo.
That was cool. And we also found out that she and Condoleezza Rice are buddies.
I think that's interesting. I know. Now, I'm sort of bucking for the fact that, maybe I think Diane is flexible, and the fact that, now it's Hillary. So I think she and Hillary may be, she may be trying to buddy up to Hillary, too. In the first season, there were pictures. You can't see the walls of my office very well, but they had photoshopped me in with Cheney and Bush.
Awesome.
Very, very funny pictures where Dick Cheney is looking at me in absolute awe, as if he just can't get enough of me. But then with the new administration, I'm now in pictures with Barack Obama and Joe Biden.
Nice.
I know.
She's dedicated to her country, not a particular party. I like that.
No. And as you notice, she has been sort of on Casey's case, so to speak, to get up to speed and stop living in the Reagan era.
Right. Yeah, he needs to progress a little bit.
But it is so Adam Baldwin. So.
It is. Yeah, and it's a really fun part of his character too, to see that.
I know.
Yeah.
That man is a genius, I have to say. Just watching him develop that character. If you watch the pilot and see how he's grown, and I get to see that the writers started writing into his just strange sense of humor that's brilliant. Those little grunts and stuff like that, but the way his eyes flicker back and forth all the time.
Oh, yeah. Huh. He is, and he can do so much with a grunt.
I know.
He's got like 32 different grunts that all mean something different.
I know. There was a point where I was going to try to see if I could weave some grunting in with Beckman, because I do feel they're so kind of like mother and son in their own bizarre way.
Yeah.
But there just wasn't time for that. So.
That's fine. Well, speaking of the team, and you talked a little bit before about feeling like she was kind of their mother figure for them. What do you think Beckman actually thinks about Team Bartowski? Does she think they're a necessary headache, or does she really view them as her best team?
Well, this is one of the things I think is great about the show, too, is that I think there has been a learning curve for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think it's been done kind of subtly, kind of not so subtly. So I think for Beckman, if you look at it, I think it was an unnecessary headache in the beginning. You know, I think she was, I mean, that's part of why she was telling, you know, Casey not to get too attached to Chuck. I mean, all she wanted to do was get this intersect built and get this boy out of there. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was like, oh, my God, why are we stuck with this supremely dangerous setup? You know, where also initially you did have the NSA versus the CIA. It was not a comfortable fit. You know what I mean? You have two different administrative powers trying to come together to sort of handle this one, the intersect, which, you know, was unprecedented. And I think as you see, as it progresses, then it becomes the necessary headache. It's like, oh, my God, well, you guys are functioning, albeit kind of limpingly, but you're functioning. You're continuing to get you're getting all the assignments accomplished. You just do it in these ludicrous fashions that's putting everyone in danger. And I think then the evolution, you know, by the end of season 2 is, you know, I'm starting to gain a lot of respect. Your methods may be unorthodox. Sorry, I haven't had enough coffee. Unorthodox, but you guys are in fact doing a better team job than any other team that I have. And I'm not quite sure how it's happening. And it doesn't mean that it's sort of assaulting my sense of the proper way to do things, but they're doing it well. And I think you can see that her respect for Chuck has grown enormously.
I think so. But you mentioned earlier the CIA NSA thing, and that's something Graham is, I mean, just startlingly no longer there.
No, I know. It's like, I guess I got lucky, and Beckman went to the bathroom before he went to the intersect room, and she had to veer off.
So what's going on now? She's in charge of the Sarah Walker, who's not even in her organization.
Yeah, I know. I think that is one of those things that had to be a little bit of a gray area. I think from a writer's standpoint, I think initially the conceit was to set it up so you could develop more of a competitiveness between Graham and Beckman. You know, you would have a little, because when we shot a couple of the early episodes, we did shoot footage where it was, you know, the two of them sort of eyeing each other suspiciously, you know, trying to override each other when they're talking. Who's got the, you know, who's actually got the upper hand here? You know, the idea maybe we would shoot stuff in his office, maybe my office, but, you know, it sort of developed, and, you know, you kind of need, for clarity's sake, one person in charge, because there's just not time. I think as you see how it fleshed out, I mean, you've got all the stuff in the Bymore, all the stuff at his home, all the stuff with the spy stuff, and it's like, do you have time to add in yet another element?
Sure.
And I think the decision ultimately was, you know, probably not so much. And, you know, it also always factors into if you need to keep your budget down. Mm-hmm. Do you need two people to do the job of one?
I see. So you think it's going to remain just Beckman in charge?
I don't know. You know, seriously, I don't know. No one's ever mentioned anything. Again, I would say the value of bringing in someone else who, you know, if you say we need someone to be that CIA handler, again, to my mind, you bring up the question of, well, now it's a power struggle again.
Sure. And then you have to pursue that storyline and...
Well, yeah, all of a sudden it's like, well, Beckman's been in charge. How does she feel about this new person coming in? I mean, you could just bring someone in, but what does that add? Unless you bring someone in who's trying to turn everything around, like Tricia Helfer did, you know. Do you bring someone in who suddenly doesn't want Casey on the job anymore, someone who doesn't have the respect that Beckman's now developed for Chuck? Or, you know, you sort of want it to bring another level.
Sure.
And that's, you know, of course that's possible. I have no idea what they're planning, but...
No, they've surprised us considerably over the last 2 years.
I know.
What's been your biggest surprise working on Chuck?
That's a kind of For me, do you mean really for me personally? There are a couple of things. I mean, I can say on a very general note, my husband and I aren't big TV watchers, and what we tend to do is I think everyone's doing it, which is part of what's the problem with network TV is we buy the DVD and then watch this, you know, we're finishing up West Wing, for instance, finally, just because we don't have time, you know. What is surprising to me is I've gotten addicted to Chuck. Which is, and I'm really, you know, it just is funny because I was watching it from a, you know, a job standpoint. It's like, this is my work. And I did learn, you know, it's like I did want to see what works and doesn't work at the desk because this is primarily where my work is coming from. And I can tell you, I have looked at every way of swiveling your chair, glasses on, glasses off, folder on, folder open, folder closed, leaning forward, leaning back, you know, just to give some movement. And I can tell you, leaning back is not good.
No.
It looks weak, and it looks kind of funny in the camera.
That's a good point.
That was, if you ever see me doing that, that now is a very conscious choice on my part. But, you know, so I started watching them, and that's what I said. I fell in love with it. It's like, I mean, I was sort of startled myself that I was looking forward to watching the shows I'm on every week. Like, oh. The other thing that I think startled me was that there's been a lot of discussion about my hairdo.
Oh, that's right.
People taking pictures of my hairdo on their cell phones, and this is the producers, and emailing each other, and, you know, everybody, like, whether it's too high or too low, whether it's a bun or a French twist, whether it's a little, like, can we make it a little softer? Do we need it to have the Eva Braun bangs? I mean, there was much more attention paid to it than I ever expected.
My goodness, I didn't know any of that was going on.
No, you don't. There are a couple episodes where it got a little high.
And they
actually, the head hair gal in the second season is fantastic, wonderful, and I love her to pieces. She also had just been working on Mad Men.
Oh.
So she was sort of into the swirl. So that's when my hair got a little high, and they asked her to push it down a little bit. But I never expected to try to explain to executive producers the difference between a French twist and a bun.
That must have been an interesting conversation.
It was. I finally said, you know, if you take a ruler, just stick it in my hair, and see, you can measure how high it is. It's a lot easier to explain. You can just see if it's 3 inches or 1.5 inches, and then decide what you want, and we'll go from there.
It's amazing the level of detail that goes into every single thing.
Oh, it does. They watch everything. You know, it's funny. Another thing that was actually very special to me is that two guys who do, like, the video portion of Chuck, which includes most of the Beckman stuff because, you know, it's they tape me and then they can show it on screens and stuff like that. These two guys, about the middle of the second season, took their hiatus to try to figure out how to rig the video cameras so that I could actually work with the other actors instead of, you know, up until that point, I would shoot all my stuff by myself, and then they would put my stuff up on the screen for them later. And, you know, I think my acting improved tremendously because I didn't know what anyone else was doing. You know, you're reading with, like, a first AD who has no acting training or, you know, somebody who's off in a corner that you can't see, and you don't know how the series regulars are going to perform it. So I would have to be very neutral, I felt, in my delivery because I would box them in. If I chose to be extremely irate in a moment, well, that would box them in into having to respond to that when maybe that's not where we wanted to go with the whole scene. So, you know, for me it was hard, and then I found out for the other actors it was hard too because they couldn't extend beats and stuff because they had to work within the timing that whoever read their lines for me had brought to the table. So these guys worked really, really hard, and they developed a way where I could hear them when they were in the castle, and I could be projected on the screen from my desk into the castle for them. So I would, you know, my days got a lot longer, but it was well worth it. And I think it's tremendous that those guys gave up their hiatus to figure out how to do that.
It is, and I think it improved, like you said, it improved the quality of those interactions tremendously.
Oh, well, it would be of no interest to anyone else, but, you know, going back and looking at them, for me, for instance, all of a sudden there's a lot more of me reacting to them. You know, beats, expressions and things like that because they fit properly.
I think that's when the fans started to say, wait a second, she's starting to kind of warm up to these people, you know, she's starting to kind of develop a relationship and show that she's got more affection maybe for Casey than she does for Sarah. And that's, I think, when the conversations really started about, this NSA versus the CIA and how come the NSA is controlling Sarah or, managing Sarah. And then the conversations about how does Beckman feel about Chuck? Because I think that must have been what had happened, is we were able to see that you guys were actually interacting.
Yes. And isn't that funny how that happens? I mean, that's the thing, is early on when you don't have, it was pretty much just, for me, talk as fast as you possibly can. I mean, believe me, I run my lines day, just because those are such technobabble. It's what my husband went through when he worked on Star Trek, too. When you have these words that you never use in your common vocabulary, and then are all like F-22s, E-54s are coming down and stuff like that. And you know that this is information that has to be delivered for the plot, but you know that no one wants to spend a whole bunch of time, you don't want to see Beckman sit there and seriously think about when the F-22 is coming through and all this kind of stuff. You need to spit it out, right? Mm-hmm. But when you get to have the deeper content and realize that she has feelings or opinions is when other people are talking.
Right.
So that ability to actually have cut back and forth because I'm actually responding, because I know how they're saying their lines. I've seen it. I've been with it. As opposed to it's, a lovely stand-in who has never looked at their lines before, who is being Chuck, who's being Casey, and who's being Sarah, and reading them in one flat monotone, It's like there just isn't that ability to start to bring that dimension that, like you said, starts to have people, starts the conversation of, well, what it really is their relationship. Why does Sarah believe, do what Beckman says, and that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So that was extremely important to me when they developed, that they made that leap with the technology.
Well, I think, it must have been for you guys, and it certainly showed on screen.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Well, tell us, what do you want to see happen with for or to Beckman in season 3?
Spin-off series called Beckman, where you just see her sitting at her desk and she just yells at you. She just clicks in whenever she feels like it. You'd have to watch it like 24/7. You never know when she'd suddenly be yelling at, what are you doing over there?
Oh, my
Get out
gosh.
of the house, put your clothes on, go get a Subway sandwich. No, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I certainly would like to have a little more opportunity, again, to interact with them in the flesh, just because that to me is really interesting, of course, and quite fun. I've thought about it a bit. I mean, one of my secret desires is that they would bring John Larroquette back, and you get to have an episode where, like, you see why they had, like, their little fling when they were younger, like the fact that maybe Beckman actually was a pretty good spy type of general herself, that she actually was able to do spy stuff and fight, and so was John Larroquette, and they were a great team. And so you have this sort of middle-aged, dumpy version of Bryce and Sarah, where there's a moment where they have to go fight fulcrum or ring enemies, and they don't do it very well. Like John Larroquette tries to swing her around and kind of basically just knock people down by sheer dint of...
I love it.
I thought it would be kind of amusing. And you have them in sort of like the black spy outfits, but it kind of doesn't look quite right. They're a little ill-fitting. And
bring on the Spanx, right?
Well, exactly. So it's sort of like a nod to the older spy and to their relationship. So I guess for me personally, it's a little bit more of who she might have been in order, because, trolling around trying to do my homework, I was looking up women who have become generals in the United States. We don't have very many of them. The first two were brigadier generals, and I think it was in the early 70s. And actually, during season 2, they have the first 4-star female general was nominated by George Bush. And the thing is, when you go online, they have, like, if you want to be a general, what you need to do to get there. On these different sites, and the idea that you started, it takes at least 20 years of sheer determination, and so you need to know very early on that that's where you want to go. I mean, it's such a commitment, and that this gal must have early on said, this is what I want, and I'm going to get there. And what kind of a person is that, a little bit? Just
Sure.
a little bit. I mean, I have to say, I think a part of what I respect is the function of Beckman within the series, which is I don't think you want to have a whole lot of episodes of Beckman strolling about doing things. I mean, but, you know, I think it'd be kind of interesting to see her, like, run up face-to-face with Captain Awesome, you know.
Oh, man, there's a showdown I'd like to see.
Me too, or her running into Morgan. I mean, I thought, well, what if you ever have to have her, you know, kind of keep an eye on things herself, so you have Beckman have to do a little undercover work, you know, where she has to be like a cashier at the Orange because she has to keep an eye on everybody, you know. I mean, how frightening would that be?
That would be awesome.
Or, you know, I mean, I still think it's also funny if someone decides to, for instance, you know, try to take Beckman hostage, but you'd still have to do it in her office on screen.
Mm-hmm. So how did they get in there? Yeah. Well, you know what, though? That leads me to, what does Beckman know about the ring? Does she have some knowledge where she may end up in a hostage situation?
Well, you know, I think it's one of the ideas that, believe me, it caused me to go, a part of, apparently one of the very first drafts of the final episode was a stab at having sort of an operatic montage during the wedding where various people were shot, including Beckman in the back. Christina, that means that we told them, no, the writer's room, no, you can't kill Beckman.
Oh, my gosh.
I said, thank you. It really was supposed to be a cliffhanger, and I said, yeah, everyone is going to wait for season 3 to see if Beckman's dead. No, it's funny because all the crew were sneaking over to me going, we're glad you're still alive, and at first it was like, what? And I was like, oh, okay. So am I. But I think the idea is that the ring obviously is deep. They've infiltrated a lot of different areas of the government of everything. They're everywhere. And I think that actually opens up an interesting possibility to me. If suddenly you have Chuck with his now new super skills having to be more like Sidney in Alias, where he has to actually travel around.
Mm-hmm.
They have to go to different countries because it's everywhere. But, you know, my guess, because, you know, obviously it hasn't been written into the scripts, is that Beckman is aware, very aware that this group is like a virus because it's multiple groups.
Mm.
But she doesn't know where it is, and that's a part of trying to contain everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of why she isn't amused by Chuck hauling off and what, you know, Casey and Sarah supporting it. It's like, you guys don't know. You don't know. I mean, it's like what happened with Casey in the final episode of having, you know, the guy that was supposed to be his buddy shooting everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't. I mean, I mean, the thing that is the giveaway to me that Beckman is aware is that line where she says, when Casey says, "You don't trust me," and she says, I trust no one."
So she knows that there's a bigger threat than Team Chuck has been aware of.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you talked a little bit in your first little bit that we talked to you for the Rally podcast about the women, the role of the women on the show. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to talk to you some more about that. And there are, as you said, there's so many strong female characters here. Where does that come from? Is that from the creators? Is that from the writers? Is it a combination?
No, it's me. It's like, and I told them, you know, I sat them all down in the room and I said, guys, you know, you guys are running a great show, but I think you need to have well, obviously, Josh Schwartz and Chris Fedak, you know, really run you know, everything that goes on in the show. And that's not to say, I think you may have talked with Allison Adler, one of the main female writers, whom I think is just phenomenal and such a strong lady. I mean, that's just a joy to watch. And I'm sure, you know, she's had input. A friend of mine, Allison Liddy Brown, has directed a number of episodes, and she's just a strong doll, too. So, I mean, it's all within the structure. But I have to say, I think it is Chris and Josh. And you know, because it's their choice. I mean, they chose to have Ellie, the sister, be a doctor. They chose to have, you know, Beckman be a woman. Something I neglected to tell you before that interested me, too, is even the female guest stars. I mean, I don't know if I said this, but that Chuck's girlfriend, Jill, she's a scientist, you know? I mean, she's brilliant.
That's true, yeah.
Lou ran a fantastically successful sandwich shop. When you see her in the shop, the guys that are working for her, those big, beefy, older guys.
Mm-hmm.
They're working for her, and they're all, her guys and excited for it. But, she's very successful. I mean, they over and over and over again, the women in the show are strong.
Mm-hmm.
There's not any kind of dippy airhead in there at all. We can only hope for if Jeff ever does get a girlfriend, what she might look like. I mean, even the the strippers that they brought in, I thought they were fantastic. The ones that were Jeff's sister and the other two. I mean, those gals were actually really fun to look at and really fun to watch, and I thought they did a fantastic job, too.
They did. And you're right. It is. That is amazing. That is.
Christian Helfer, I mean, how much stronger can he get?
That's very, very cool. Very.
So I don't think it's like accidental.
Mm-mm.
And I think it's something that makes me very happy. I was thinking about it too. I mean, you do realize that one of the huge themes of the show too is what is your job, what is your occupation, and how much do you believe in what you do?
Mm. That's true.
It's one of the few shows where everybody has a job.
Yeah, that's
even if it's the buy more, their work is incorporated into the plot of the show as well.
That's true. It really is a unique show once you start really breaking down the elements.
That's what I think. That's why that's what I meant about I think that's why I think families do enjoy watching it, is because it is very much about. Oddly enough, they've managed to round out people's lives. I mean, you do know who everybody's parents are. You've met Morgan's mom. You know that Jeff's mom is in prison. I mean, down to the smallest detail, people have relationships in this show. And I don't know how they pack it into 40 minutes or 42 minutes, whatever it is.
They are pros with the throwaway lines. Like during Santa Claus, when there's the hostage situation at the Buy More, we have less than a minute and we find out that Casey calls his mom and she calls him Johnny Boy. That's when we find out where Jeff's mom is. And we just find out all this little stuff. And just as, they can pack it all into 60 seconds. It's amazing.
I know. That's really good writing. That's trusting that you'll get it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to hammer it. You just pop it in there, and all of a sudden it's part of the story. It's part of the Bible of the characters and of the show.
Yeah.
I'm still really always amused that Jeff has drinking dance.
I'm just amused by Jeff in general.
I know. He's also the dearest guy.
He is. Scott. I got to talk with Scott a few months ago, and he was a lot of fun. Boy, that guy's got a lot going on.
He does.
Yeah, he's a busy guy.
I'm glad.
Yeah. Well, another thing that the fans got a huge kick out of was learning that you're married to John Billingsley. and it seems like Chuck is a show for Star Trek expatriates. Because
we were just at FedCon in Germany.
Oh, yeah.
This last weekend. Boy, that was tiring. But fun, very fun. And Bob Picardo was there.
Uh-huh.
And we were discussing that because, he guested on Chuck. And actually we are good friends with Scott Bakula, so that was just a hoot to have him on there. And I don't know if I mentioned to you, the first AD this season, Dave Trotty, was the first AD for, I think, at least the last 3 Star Trek series, and definitely on Enterprise with John. And then the head of special effects for Chuck this season is Dan Curry, who's the head of special effects for Star Trek. So, yeah, it's a whole family there.
Yeah. And, of course, Robert Duncan McNeil.
Yeah, Robbie Duncan McNeil.
That's great. For Star Trek fans like me, every time their names come up, we're like, yay!
I know, and actually, I just have to say, Robbie is so talented. I mean, he's such a talented actor. But the fact that he can be supervising producer, run everything so well, and he's a terrific director. I think it's just wonderful.
Yeah. Well, how did you and John meet? You mentioned before that he came down to LA before and you met in theater?
No, we met on Santa Monica Boulevard.
Oh.
I was wearing a lot of makeup. No, I'm kidding. We do this to each other. Hey, did you hear that from down there? I get to say from downstairs he heard that. Well, as the mythology of meeting my dear husband, whom I love very, very much because I'm very lucky, we met in 1998. He'd been down here for a few years. I grew up here. And the first time I saw him, I saw a play called Great Expectations at A Noise Within. He played Herbert Pocket, and I just thought he was the best thing in the play. And I went up to tell him so afterwards. And in my mythology, he was so interested in going out afterwards that he didn't pay any attention to me. So he just walked off and said, fine. And then we ran into each other doing like acting workshops because we were both trying to figure out how to get a TV and film career.
Mm-hmm.
And then one evening, my dear friend Bruce Wieland leaned over to me at dinner and said, "Do you know a guy named John Billingsley?" And I said, "Oh yeah, he's a great actor." And he said, "You should go out with him." I went, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, I met him this morning, and you guys would get along really well." And so a couple of days later, I was going to a commercial audition, and it was about 5 in the evening, and John was walking by to put money in the meter for his car because he was at the exact same commercial audition. And he says that I did some sort of little wink-wink at Irate. They smiled in a fetching way or so. I just said hi in my story. But so we walked back to the commercial audition, and it was so backed up that we sat there for 3 hours, and he had a date that night. So I went into this lengthy thing about how I thought dating was hard on people. I didn't believe in dating. I'd been married before and had been divorced, which he had too. And I was like, oh, I can't believe how you date people that could be axe murderers and all this kind of stuff. And so as he was leaving, he turned around to me and he said, "Can I have your phone number? Just don't think of it as a date." So I gave him my phone number, which I'd never done before to anyone, and he broke up with that gal. He says he broke up with her the next day. Really, he broke up with her that night, and then he called me a couple of days later.
Wow.
And
that's so sweet.
It is sweet.
We won't tell him that, but
oh, he
sweet.
knows. I tell him it all the time.
Okay.
Man, no, but he's wonderful.
It sounds like he is.
He is. He's a sweetheart.
Yeah. Well, what's it like being married for two busy actors? Because he's popping up all over the place too.
He pops up everywhere. It's really weird when he is working. Sometimes I actually do go turn on TV because I'm bored at like 11 o'clock at night, and inevitably he pops up on a show. It's like, what are you doing there? It's John. It's John on Grey's Anatomy. John on Prison Break. John on. Well, frankly, we are character actors, though.
Mm-hmm.
And character actors don't work as much as other people. So, we're lucky that way. I mean, I think it must be really, really hard when you're both actors and, you have to make these agreements to see each other every 2 weeks or, because neither one of us travel. We aren't traveling at the same time or anything like that. And, I mean, I have to say, I think in its own right, if you have full-time jobs,
mm-hmm.
two people with full-time jobs, I mean, by and large, you don't get to see each other, all day long.
Right.
If you're lucky, you get to see each other at night. I mean, we tend to be in each other's hair, off and on at least a couple days a week,
Mm-hmm.
And with actors, you may work a lot, but then there will be periods where you don't work a lot. So you actually may spend a lot of time with each other and then no time. Because when things air, too, and you're very savvy, I'm sure you know this, when things air, they may air all at once,
mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean you didn't have a month in between when you shot them.
Right.
So the dynamics are time-wise slightly different. That being said, it's lovely because we do understand each other's work. We do understand each other's hours, which I think can be hard for other people. I do understand when John is working on True Blood and he's rolling on the ground making out with a woman that actually I run into at auditions all the time, but it's not real. And then I'll meet her at an audition soon this year and be able to say, "Oh, you were naked with my husband recently," and it's fine. But oddly enough, one of the more difficult things is John just did a play at the Pasadena Playhouse called Mauritius, and it had been a while since he had done a play, and the hours on that are much worse. I mean, actually, I think Matthew Broderick, someone was quizzing him or James Gandolfini or something about doing a show on Broadway, and those are the 8-show weeks and stuff. And he said, it's just too hard time-wise. You never get to see your family.
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually, I felt lonelier than I have in a long time.
Yeah.
While he was doing that play. But otherwise, it's fun.
Yeah. It sounds like you guys have fun with each other. Just from
with each other. I have to admit, when we're at FedCon, we tend to do the question and answers together now because I heckle him.
Oh, nice.
I think so, too. And this one, I'm not quite sure how it came about, but John ended up coming on stage in his underpants. We'll do anything for a laugh. It was late at night. We were doing a show for 4,000 Germans at 10:30 at night, so it was like, you know what? We want to give you something you'll never forget. So we spent a good portion of our question and answer with me pulling his pants up while he kept dropping them and me putting them on backwards and things like that. So we are not serious.
No, you kids are nutty. I love it. Yeah. Well, the fans also really got a kick out of your story about everybody gathering outside and freaking out the tour group. You know, I mean, I can't imagine having been on that. I've been on the Warner Brothers tour a couple of times, and I've never seen anything like that.
No, I know. Like, you're lucky if you get sort of like a long-distance shot of somebody. You go, oh, that's so-and-so.
Yeah.
But to have them all standing out there, I just thought it was very funny. And the fact that Zach was like 2 feet from them going, yes, this really is me. You know, you're like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Well,
Start texting.
Well, I know. Well, I was kind of like startled when John Stamos was coming over there and hanging out with Scott Bakula. This is getting a little weird over here.
Yeah. Do you have any other behind-the-scenes stories that you'd like to share?
I just have to say, when you're working with Zach and Yvonne and Adam, there's a lot of singing that tends to go on, and it's kind of uncontrollable. And actually, a number of the guys on the crew love rock and roll music too. So at any given moment, you may have the entire crew and those three rocking out in front of you, and then action, and everyone shuts up, and it's pretty screamingly funny. Zach's always singing. I think you've heard that. He has a really good voice to begin with, but not only is he always doing strange accents and puttering around, things just come out of his mouth. It's like, what? Did you really say that? But it's contagious. So all of a sudden, Adam starts doing it, and then Yvonne starts doing it, and all of a sudden you have the three of them, like, singing at the top of their lungs. Right when I have to speak, man.
Of course.
Like, thanks, guys. And the other thing I would like to say is Adam Baldwin, he's very much into guns and anything military. He knows a lot about it. So he's always, and I appreciate it, he likes to instruct me on the finer points of saluting, and they all do. All the guys are like, that's a lame salute. So he also keeps great note about the different areas where we're supposed to have soldiers fighting and stuff like that. And in the final episode, you will notice that I say something about him going back to Waziristan. Well, at the last moment, I was supposed to be saying he was going to Bosnia, and when they were shooting my stuff, he was like, no, it's got to be Waziristan. And it's like, you really want me on the fly to say Waziristan. But now I can say, but when you're nervous and you're trying to get this stuff out, it's like you've learned Bosnia in the middle of a big paragraph. It's like, really? I was like, okay, I'll do it. And it's funny because he had to do some sort of a move where he got a gun or something like that and move on my line Waziristan. I could not get it out. I would get to that and my eyes would cross and I'd be like, and by the end of like the 12th take, he was like, I know he was cursing himself. It was like, why? And I know, I was sitting there going, why couldn't it have been Bosnia? Why couldn't it have been Bosnia? So he was hoisted on his own
petard.
Waziristan petard, yes.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you get a lot of joy out of acting, but what do you do outside of acting? What are your hobbies?
Nothing. I sit in the closet and I rock back and forth.
Yeah, until you can report to the set.
John lets me out. He slides pieces of paper under the door that say, honey, you've got a job next week, or honey, do you want something to eat? Or, well, this is an interesting thing. Well, first of all, I love my cats. They shouldn't be in a hobby. They are my life, but other than my husband. But I'm going to have to go on a little bit because I have to take my girl kitty.
Yeah.
I'm doing, a friend is doing like a sort of short vampire thing. I'm not quite sure what it is. It's part of a webisode series that some stunt guys have developed called, I think it's called The Hunting. I'm not sure. But she's a friend. She wrote the episode. She's directing, and she asked me to play like a sort of vampire politician gal who, in the middle of it, starts getting in a sword fight with these guys and gets killed. And of course, I love all that kind of stuff. So I said, oh, sure, because also I get to work with these two stunt gentlemen who are like the top in their field. One of them, for instance, taught Michelle Pfeiffer how to use a bullwhip.
Ooh.
In Catwoman, I was like, oh my God. So I started, I took a little bit of fencing when I was in college, but I'm learning how to use a rapier right now. And the thing is I was looking online at videos of what one of these guys, Anthony, has done with the bullwhip and with sword fighting and all this kind of stuff. And he actually does teach classes at his ranch and using whips. So I think I'm going to start learning how to use a bullwhip.
Well, that would be
kind of cool.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. And I could see Beckman using a whip.
I think that might be kind of cool if she could use a whip, don't you think?
Yeah. She'd definitely have to be out from behind the desk.
Yes. Otherwise, you just sort of see things falling down from the shelves of her office, and she'd get tangled up in her own chair and fall out of it. But I'm just sort of lame. I love all sorts of kind of stunt fighting and things like that. And I studied dance when I was younger, and a friend of mine wanted me to be a Pilates guinea pig for her because she started learning to teach Pilates about a year and a half ago, and she's really fantastic, and so I've gotten hooked on that. So, it's not like I'm into, like, athletic things. I just find all of this, as I'm getting older, too, in particular, it keeps my legs from freezing up. Mm-hmm. So that when I get out of bed, I don't fall down, which was starting to happen to me. And John and I love to travel, and a lot of that, I think, has come out of doing the Star Trek conventions, quite frankly. Mm. I mean, you get to go to the most unusual places that you would never, ever think of going.
Yeah.
So we've sort of gotten we've been to some of those strangest places in the United States. And then we make little side trips, from there. And we've been to New Zealand, which is fantastic. Mm. We've been to Australia a number of times now.
That is awesome.
London. So we've kind of gotten very interested in that. And I'm trying to learn how to garden, but I just kill everything.
The black thumb.
Yeah, and actually it's been really hard, particularly this year, because it's getting so hot. Mm-hmm. It's like I planted my plants the flowers and stuff when you're supposed to because it's spring, and then we had a heat wave, and I walked outside, and they were lying down on their sides, looking at me sadly, saying, I can't do this. So, but I'm going to learn. I'm going to get better.
All right. Well, you're in a great place to learn gardening, for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, are you involved with any charities, or do you have any other projects that we can promote for you?
Well, actually, John and I are deeply involved in right now one particular charity. John was on the board for 6 years, and I was on the board for 3, and it's called the AIDS Service Center. Mm-hmm. It's based in Pasadena. My brother died of AIDS about 18 years ago now, and he was my best friend, and I loved him so much. And that was in 1980.
And we're back. Oh, boy, she is a sweetie.
She really is. She's such a doll. I had such a good time talking to her.
She's a lot of fun, isn't she?
Mm-hmm. And I love that she kept including her husband in the conversation.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of his, too.
Yes. Yeah. So that would be a fun joint interview sometime, but it really was a treat to get to talk with her about Chuck and her views on the show and her character and all of that. So
yeah,
I love that she's a fan. That's what I love.
Absolutely.
She's a fan.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're going to wrap things up. We do want to remind everybody that we have an email list that you can receive updates about new podcast releases and also about voting. And if you want to sign up for that, just send an email to mail@chuckpodcast.com and make sure that in the subject line you put notify.
Right.
That's right. And while you're over at Podcast Alley, why don't you take a moment and vote for us and leave some comments. We love to read your comments, your thoughts about the podcast, about the show, about the characters. Go ahead and leave your comments. Voting puts us at number 1, makes us your number 1 Chuck podcast, which we all know that, you think that we are. And iTunes, visit us at iTunes. And let's keep going. Let's keep going with Chuck.
That's right. We hope to see you at the next Chuck Me Monday. Be sure to stop by chucktv.net for all the details on that. And I also want to give a quick mention about the Chuck You Tuesday fan cast that some of the gang over at chucktv.net have produced. The first one is available now, and you can find more information about that at chucktv.net as well.
Very cool. And I do want to mention that if you're curious about when we'll be releasing over the hiatus, we've been talking about it, and we're thinking about probably once every 3 or 4 weeks, just because there won't be a lot of news necessarily going on. It'll be more frequent if we happen to land more frequent interviews or if there's fan events to cover. So it may vary, but we do intend to at least produce one a month because we know you miss Chuck.
That's right, and we do want to also mention that Comic-Con is coming up next month, and Liz and I will be there, along with Sisk J from ChuckTV.net, covering the panel and all the goodies that they have in store for us. So keep an eye out for that as well.
Cool. So we're going to leave you with our funky music.
We'll see you next time, and a shout out to Vern and the boys.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.